in the last part of this conversation, I want to talk about China. China and the US seem to be pulling back from the kind of increasing confrontation. How do you see that relationship play itself out? And how do you see Xi Jinping deal with India and Prime Minister Modi's government?
So you're right. China is being much more sensible with regard to its foreign policy, much less aggressive with the US. There is an effort to create a working relationship. The US has also, in some way, reached out more than they had in the past. The fundamental question Xi Jinping faces is not how he'll deal with the US, because the US is so powerful. At some level, you knew there was going to be some kind of rationality would step in at some point. The question is, how will he deal with India, with Japan, with Australia? Because the key that we have to remember about China is this is all not just about America. It's that China's rise has caused great nervousness and anxiety and opposition in Japan, in India, in Vietnam, in South Korea, in Australia, in the Philippines. And Xi has not been a particularly good foreign policy president in that sense. He has managed to alienate almost all these countries. So if Xi is able to genuinely adjust course, that would be one thing. But I think Xi is much more ideological than people realize. Look at the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy is doing very badly. After 40 years of extraordinary success, China's technocrats know what to do. They have handled these crises in the past expertly. China has grown at a pace no country in the world has ever grown. And yet they are not doing it. Why? Because Xi Jinping doesn't believe in those technocrats. He doesn't believe in the market-oriented way they handle things. He doesn't believe in easing up the economy, allowing consumers to spend more, giving easy credit. He thinks this is all soft, weak. He gave a speech to young people that's very telling. Young people have, by some measures, 35, 40, 45% unemployment. And he gives a speech to these young people saying, you have it too easy. When I was growing up, we were sent into the farms of the Cultural Revolution. You need to suffer. You need to struggle. That's what will build your character. So that's a very different approach, So Xi may be much more ideological.
But how's he most likely to deal with India from where we are at this moment? Because he boycotted or didn't come to the G20 in India, Prime Minister Modi, and Xi hardly met, just a very curtsy handshake. And the armies are still deployed in some areas, eyeball to eyeball, along the line of actual control.
So what he should do, if he was smart, is the most important relationship in the world for China should be India. Because if he can defang India and defang India's opposition to him, the American alliance in Asia becomes much less potent, because otherwise you're dealing with offshore countries. India is the only major land power.
But he seems to be playing to a different tune.
He's playing to a different tune. He is not taking any real steps. I mean, what has he gained from that Himalayan excursion? 40 miles of glaciers, and in return, he completely changed the Indian attitude towards China. So I suspect that tensions will continue. I don't see any particular rapprochement unless you see a real de-escalation, and it would have to start with that border. I think for India, understandably, the symbol of China's commitment to a different relationship would be not just de-escalation from the border, but the destruction of infrastructure that has been built at the border. Because you can't just withdraw your troops and keep in place the whole infrastructure there, which can allow them to surge forward at any moment.
But there's no sign of that. Far from, they're building new villages, they're building more roadways, they're building more military infrastructure. So what do you think could be going on in the mind of Xi Jinping and the generals in the PLA? Where are they going with this?
Look, it seems that this Chinese leadership has an obsession with the idea of demonstrating to India that it is the older brother. If you remember, that was the phrase that used to be used in the 60s after the 62 war, where that the Chinese wanted to show the Indians that they were, superior. They were the more powerful country. They were the leading power of Asia. And maybe that is the dynamic here, because, as I say, it makes no rational sense. China should be trying to play the US and India, put a wedge between them. There are 16 borders China has. It has resolved 15 of them, largely. this is the 16th, and they show no signs of wanting to resolve it, you have to assume it is because they have a strategic desire to maintain a certain kind of, as you know, that area is sensitive because there is a potential, there's a way in which you can create a kind of stranglehold, a choke point for India, over India. And maybe they want to do that.